Now we'll look at just troubleshooting fan motors, blower motors, condenser fan motors, either way. I got one set up here. What I'm going to do first of all is this is a new motor that I've got set up. And we'll just start it up and see how they're supposed to start, how they're supposed to sound. And then we'll play with the capacitor and see what kind of symptoms you get when the capacitors go bad. But when they start up, you know, it'll just be a quiet start, fairly quick start. No roars, no rumbles, no grunts, no groans. And of course we're getting some propeller noise simply because the way I got it mounted, there's no enclosure, it's just blowing free. So, but as I said, it started up and it started up fairly smooth. There's just a little bit of noise, which I think is probably just the support bracket holding it on. But like I say, you don't hear anything but the propeller noise. Okay, now we'll simulate an open capacitor, run capacitor. I just disconnected one of the wires. And we'll energize the thing now and see what it looks like. So it's just sitting there humming. You can spin it and it'll take off, which is fairly characteristic of capacitor problems. You know, sometimes the blower will start up and run without any help when the capacitor's bad, but a lot of times they won't. And you can spin it, you know, and it'll run. You know, and it seems to be running at normal RPMs, and it sounds okay, but it just wouldn't start. But I didn't have it on the camera, but I've got a little amp meter hooked up over there, and with the no load or with the normal running situation with the capacitor intact, it was pulling about 1 amp. But in that case, when I disconnected the capacitor wire, it was pulling 2 amps, so it would have eventually overheated. Now we'll simulate a shorted capacitor. And all I've done here is put both of the capacitor wires on the same terminal. Now see, it started up, but you can maybe you can't tell, it's running a lot slower than it was earlier. So, and right now it's pulling 5 amps, which is way overloaded. But the thing to notice is it's still not making a whole lot of noise. Like I say, it's running a little slower than it was a minute ago. And like I say, if I don't shut it off here in just a second, it's going to overheat. So that tells you something. If you can, you know, if it won't start and you can spin it and it'll start and run on its own, then, or if it starts and runs slow and pulls high amp, something like that, then that's usually an indication that you got a capacitor problem. Okay, now I've got an old motor that I took off of a heat pump sometime back, which was not, it was a bad motor, and I'm going to start it up and listen to the difference in the sounds. You could hear an obvious abnormal noise when it started up, and then when it got to running, there's a little whine. I don't know if you can pick it up or not with this little microphone, but it's making a whine. But the biggest giveaway is that start noise. Let me do it again. But it makes the magnetic noise, whatever you want to call it, on start up, and then it's got that whine to it, and it goes up, and it's not running as fast as it should run. It just doesn't, you know, it just doesn't sound right or run right. But on this particular motor, I can show you one thing. I can show you the main thing that's wrong with it, which is the bearings wore out on it. You can hear that, but that slack in the shaft, side to side slap, and that's always that's a no-no. You get one like that, it's not going to, it may run like this and took off and run, but after a while it'll get hot and quit. Now I'll let you hear it without the fan blade on it, so you can really hear the magnetic, electrical magnetic noise it's trying to make. say, that noise is just not normal. Now I got a real good close-up on that shaft, and you can see the play in the bearing. Like I said, they just won't run when they're like that. So that's motors. I say it's either going to be the motor or the capacitor, and this is assuming that the controls that it's trying to run. You know, I did it like this so that you could see just what can go wrong with the motor. So assuming it's getting voltage, and usually when it's trying to run, then you know you don't have a problem with the control, you don't have a problem with the voltage. And the only thing you do, you know, if it's not running right, if it's pulling high amps, if it's making noise, you know, change the capacitor, and then if it works, okay, great. If it don't, then you know you need a new motor. Of course, anytime you're dealing with motors and you go on one and you energize it and you hear it humming and not trying to run, or trying to run but not running and making a hum, then it could be a capacitor. Sometimes it's tight bearings. Of course, this is a no-brainer, but you always, you know, you give it a spin and they should turn real free. If the bearing's a little bit tight and you spin it and it stops like that, then you got tight bearings. These little PSC motors, they're not designed to start up under a whole lot of strain, so if the bearings are tight, then it won't go. Now I mounted this blower wheel on here to show you some problems you can have that are not, they'll make you think it's the motor and it's not the motor. But if these hubs, in some cases, when they get loose on the shaft, you get a bump, bump, bump sound, which may make you think that the thing's out of alignment or out of balance, and you'll mess with it and you can't get anything out of it. But a couple of 3 times I've seen them where they were bumping real bad, and it turned out that just the set screw had gotten loose and had never been tight, and the blower wheel was just loose on the shaft. And the other thing that will mess you up sometimes, that the hub can get loose in its mount to the blower assembly. I went on a packaging at one time and I turned it on, and just a few seconds after it started up, the motor, what I thought was the motor, would start making a sound that sounded just like one that was messed up, making a grunting, growling sound. And I took off and got a new motor, came back and put the new motor on it, and turned it on, the same thing. Then I got to looking close, and there was just a little bit of slack between the hub and the blower wheel connection, and it was just, when it started running, it would be slipping back and forth on that hub and making a racket that sounded a whole lot like a bad motor. And then sometimes these things, these two centerpieces will get, in fact it's like that on this, and I'll start it up in a minute, but it makes an unusual sound that may make you think that there's something wrong with the motor, when in fact it's the blower wheel. And then sometimes the vanes themselves will get loose, and it makes a strange sound. But I'm going to start it up, and you'll, when it first starts up, you'll hear a metallic sound that doesn't sound like the motor or anything else. Now once it gets up to speed, it starts running on. Of course, it's got a real bad wobble in it too, so that can create a knock-knock when it's bouncing around. The way I got it just mounted to this piece of plywood. Here goes. But I think you could hear that metallic sound when it, right before it got up to top speed. And of course, condenser fans with propeller blades on them, sometimes the hull will get loose on the blade, and you'll get strange sounds. They tend to slip all away completely, but if you just happen to catch it when the hub's first beginning to get loose on the blade, then you'll get sounds that you know are not normal. The only reason I tell you this is, like I say, just don't jump to conclusion when you hear noises. You know, you can usually tell the difference between a motor noise, a bad motor noise, and a bad blower or bad propeller noise, but sometimes they sound a whole lot alike.